Hello mga momser! For today's video, we are going to talk about poetry and prose. First, let's talk about their origin. So, poetry originates from the Latin word poeta, which means poet. And the word prose comes from the Latin term prose, which means straightforward. In poetry, language is used for its evocative and aesthetic qualities in addition to its meaning. So it brings strong images, memories, or feelings to mind. On the other hand, prose is defined as the most general form of written language that is not used for formal patterns of a verse. And the goal of poetry is selling the language itself as music. Whereas the goal of prose is sharing information. And in poetry, best words in the best order. And in prose, words in their best order. So as you can see in poetry, we have the best words, but in prose, we only have words. Because when writing a poetry, we choose the words carefully. And it is usually descriptive. And in prose, it is just sharing information. It is the natural way of, it is the common way of writing. In poetry, lines are considered the basic units. But in prose, sentences are considered the basic units. So in poetry, there are lines. And in prose, there are no lines, but there are sentences. Poetry is a lyrical form of writing, and prose is a typical form. In poetry, it has structure, format, and rhyming. In prose, there has no structure, format, and rhyming. And poetry is usually divided into lines or phrases. But prose, it is not usually divided into sentences. Because in prose, you form a paragraph. Not just a sentence, but sentences in a paragraph. A poetry is more expressive, and prose is dull. Poetry serves to excite, whereas prose is simple and common. And another characteristic of poetry is it is imaginative, but the prose is just ordinary. Now let's move on to the use of poetry and prose. So the first one, it is used in writing songs and poems, but the latter is used in different articles, stories, and letters. So basically, prose is a type of literature in which the language is used in its natural and organic form. It is not concerned with rhyme or rhythm. And prose is usually no word restriction for the writer. And the concepts there are written in sentences, which are then organized into paragraphs. Whereas the poetry is a type of literature that employs the aesthetic and rhythmic characteristics of a language. It is concerned with rhyme and rhythm. And it is composed of lines that are organized into stanzas. I hope you learned something from this video. See you in the next part, which is the types of poetry and prose. Baboosh!